Hi guys, it's James here at Full Fat 4x4. Today I have a treat especial for you. It is an L322 versus L405 video. So this was requested by one of the viewers, Robert LZ, I think your YouTube handle is. So hopefully you find this video useful. Just before we go into that, I'm going to give you a few updates on what's been going on. Behind me you can see Bluey, the Westminster, affectionately nicknamed, because I've been driving it around for November, December, so I've agreed a sale on that one to a really lovely couple from Salisbury, who I think are also viewers of the channel, so you know who you are, guys. Look forward to handing that over to you, and yeah, we'll be genuinely sad to see that one go. I really liked your description of the interior, how I think one of you described it as being like a really warm feeling inside with that parchment interior and that suede headlining. So yeah, we'll be genuinely sad to see that one go. Yeah, well, I've also had a couple of questions just about some like must-have accessories. So I'm just going to walk you through a couple of those. So on the bench in front of me, one of them is the Bovee connector. So basically, what this does is it plugs into the center console box in the iPad socket, and then this is a sort of Bluetooth dongle, and it lets you connect your iPhone through to the L322 built-in sound system. So it's a really good bit of kit. The connection seems to be pretty seamless, so I definitely recommend. I'll put a link in the description below. And then the next sort of must-have for me would be one of these no-co boost things. So basically what happens is if your battery is a bit low, you stick this booster pack onto the battery and it just gives it a little top up. Now the L322 is a juicy beast in terms of electrical demand, so if you get yourself into a position where you have a bit of a marginal battery, then it's quite handy to have a no-co boost pack to hand, just to get you going. So yeah, a couple of accessories that I'd recommend. So we'll go outside and I'll walk you through the cars. So today's comparison, we're going to be doing the 12-plate Westminster that I have in black. So that's a Santorini black with an ivory interior. So that one is one of my vehicles, which is for sale. And I've very kindly been lent this L405 on a 66 plate Vogue SE trim level by a friend of mine who is also selling this vehicle. So yeah, will be quite an interesting comparison, I think. So it's going to be a bit more of a qualitative comparison, this video. I'm going to have to confess, I don't really know an awful lot about the L405. I really need to get one in for a bit, kind of live with it, learn about it some more before I start moving into this market. However, there are a few things I'm going to sort of talk you through which stand out to me. I guess firstly I'm just going to talk about the colour scheme. So this one is black over black, and it has black wheels with blacked out rear windows. I think this colour combination is really going to suit, how should I put this, a very private gentleman. I'll let you read into that whatever you want to, but this is certainly the sort of colour combination that I think, if you attend a lot of black tie events, then yeah, that's definitely for you. It's a bit too much for me, but I know some people love this stuff, so yeah, those who are private gentlemen, this is for you. Okay, jolly good. So first sort of big thing for me, I've got the key in front of me and I think this is how it works. Yeah, press and hold that and the boot opens, which is pretty cool. I do like that. I think that's a really nice feature. And then in terms of the tailgate, yeah, there's still plenty of space to sit on this. You're not losing that sort of functionality of the L322. However, what I would say is, and this is I think where the L322 has the upper hand, the shape of the boot is definitely smaller. If you're going to be using your Range Rover for utilitarian purposes and to actually do stuff, for me, the L322 has got to be the winner on this one, just because the boot space is, it's pretty cavernous. This feels like a really cavernous space. You've got a big entry. It's more square. You can get more stuff, more awkward shaped stuff in there compared to the L405, which is a bit more rakish. In terms of overall volume, I think they're probably about the same, to be honest with you. But, you can kind of see the 405 it's got a slightly more rakish profile than the 322. So I think for me, in terms of pros and cons, it's the L322 wins on boot shape. And whilst I do really like this, closey, pressy button kind of thing, that's great as long as you don't, you're not planning on being in the boot all the time. So I've definitely been, on countryside pursuits where we're in and out the boot all the time for various different bits and pieces. And I had a friend with a Discovery 5 with the same function, and he did manage to run his battery flat on several occasions because we were constantly, in and out all day long. And eventually he started getting the, low battery, start the bloody car and all that kind of good stuff. So it's a lovely feature. For me, it's the old school tailgate, though. I think that's the winner. Then sort of moving inside, I think the next space to really talk about, I think these are the important bits and pieces, the seat. So this is what you're going to be sitting in, it's pretty much the most important feature, I think, of the car as a seat. So I'm going to give the points on this one to the L405. And the reason for that is that you've got more adjustability, certainly in this model, which is a Vogue SE. So you can move the seat base forward and back, as well as the whole seat forward and back. So you've just got a bit more flexibility in terms of adjustment. And also this one has got side bolsters, which inflate to basically give you a bit more sort of, I'm not really sure what you'd call it, but just more support on the back. So yeah, the point on this one definitely goes to the 405. Also, in this particular shape, these are absolutely lovely. These sort of cushion, it's a really soft cushion. So I'm going to give the point to the 405 on this one for the seat. In terms of inside, now, look, this is all super subjective stuff. However, what I really like about the L322 over there is that it is more boxy, and you can really clearly see where everything starts and ends. This one feels, I think, again, I'm going to kind of use that word rakish again. So it is more slopey. It's not as easy to see the corners, and the same goes for the rear. So you don't quite have the same level of visibility as you do in an L322 versus the L405. So just for comparison, whilst we're on this subject, I'm going to jump in the 322, kind of show you what I'm talking about. We'll just shut this boot. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, is there? It's a bit of a gimmick, really, all this electric business. So just hop in here, and you should instantly be able to see the bonnet is a lot more square. You can, it's really obvious that it ends there and it ends there. And then in the back, again, I just feel like you get slightly better visibility out those huge rear windows. You can really see where all the corners are. Look, the colour scheme is super subjective, and it would have been good if I could get this car either in a black interior or that one with the ivory interior, but by the by, that's what was available. In terms of seat comfort, just a quick contrast. I mean, to be honest, the 322 seat is very comfy. It's got a lot of adjustability there. It's got front and back. Yeah, okay, it doesn't have the fancy bit that lets you move the seat base, but you've got 4-way lumbar support, which really does give you a lot of good support. It's got the same captain's armrest. You can't really go wrong with the 322 seats, but you do get just that little bit more in the 405. Continuing on the theme of interior, think my kind of overall impression of this interior, and I'm probably going to be hopping between the two cars quite a bit, it does feel more premium, more high-end. It feels like a Mercedes S-Class. So when I get in this, I get the impression that I'm kind of jumping in something more Mercedes-esque than Land Rover-esque. It's a very, very different design ethos. And I think it's actually really important to call out, you know, there's lots of people on bloody Facebook forums saying, oh, don't buy an L322, save up, buy an L405, they're overlapping in price. Yes, that's true, they are starting to overlap in price. But what I think you need to understand is that they're actually very different cars. You know, it's almost like comparing an Audi and a BMW. They're completely different vehicles. Yes, they're both Range Rovers. Yeah, there's some, you know, some design cues which are similar, but they're totally different cars. The way they drive is different. The way they look, the way they feel, is completely different. So I think, you know, if you are in that space of, oh, you know, I could afford an L405 or I could afford an L322, you're going to have to go and sit in both of them, drive both of them, and then make up your mind which you actually prefer, because they are totally different vehicles. Okay, I think we'll have a quick look at engines and have a chat about those. So let's see, where's the opening? Oh, it's on the other side, isn't it, on this one? Again, this is where my ignorance of the 405 starts to show through, so apologies, but it's not down there, it's got to be on the other side. I have had one L405 in stock, and that was probably about 18 months ago. Oh, it's got that bloody double lock business, two-stage unlocking activated. So where's the button for it? Here. There we go, it's unlocked now. So let's have a look. I suspect that all we're going to see underneath there is a big pile of plastic covers. Okay, so already I don't like that. I prefer to have the catch on the driver's side, so it makes me think this has probably been designed for the American market. Is it under the V? There we go. No, there you go, top tip. The opening catch is under the centre. Right, so let's pull that up and off. That come off. Right, so things do actually look quite similar underneath here. So you can see that the architecture does look very similar. Two air intakes on either side of the V, which is what we've got on the 322. It looks like these bracing struts, I'm going to guess they're for overall body rigidity and stiffness, which you don't have on that. And I think that is something to talk about. The vehicle dynamics on the 405 are, well, they're very different. It's more car-like in the 405 compared to the 322. So let's just get this bonnet open and we can kind of do a bit of a compare and contrast what we've got underneath. So yeah, you can probably tell I know my way around the 322 very well, but the 405 is pretty alien to me at the moment. So yeah, what do we got? Big plenum, that looks pretty much identical to the 405. I think they are the same pattern part. So this is the SDV8 that we've got in this L405, and this is a TDV8. So the difference S and T is denoted by the power output. So off the top of my head, I think you get 339 in the 405 and you get 308 in the 322. So yeah, we haven't got those bracing stiffeners that go from the kind of the centerpiece out to the struts. That's all the fuel pump, fuel cooler, fuel filter. So what have we got on this side? That is very different. So we haven't got any, oh, that looks like the fuel cooler, and that looks like the fuel filter. Gosh, that looks like it's going to be a real pig to get to. I mean, it's a pig enough on the 322 4.4 TDV8, but yeah, that's going to be a bit of a pig to get to change. However, on the other hand, it looks like there's less stuff in the way to do a number 2 air filter change, which is a pain on the 322 because there's a few things you've got to remove to get there. I mean, just whilst I'm on that subject, this is a really crap design. You know, whoever designed this air filter in Land Rover, I think there's a special place in hell for you. These screws are hopeless. They just rust to bits. And the amount of 322s I've had in where the heads are rounded off and you have to either pull out the whole box, grind them off, you know, a real poor design choice there. You know, the Toyotas that I've worked on have had much better designs for air filter changes, a sort of clip system where the whole thing just pops off. Okay, yeah, the other thing to sort of talk about, the battery isn't in the engine bay. I think it's in the boot under the spare wheel bay. Now, yeah, well, I think that's the case. We'll have to have a look for it. But yeah, I mean, you can see a lot of the stuff is very similar. You know, a lot of parts are interchangeable between the TDV8 and the SDV8, and you know, they have the same common weaknesses. So I think this one you can maybe just see possibly there's a little bit of an oil leak starting on that cooler, which is, you know, the TDV8s are renowned for having oil cooler leaks. And also these plenims cracking, you know, that's the same thing with the TDV8. These hoses splitting, yeah, it's a theme. Same thing with the TDV8, and these rocker covers. So they're made of a sort of composite plastic, same as the plenim. And yeah, they're both known for splitting and cracking. What I would say is that the overall layout in the engine bay on the 322, there is a lot more space. It's pretty obvious to see that the packaging in the 405 is a lot more compressed compared to the 322. So I think I'm probably going to give the point to the 322 in terms of working on it, especially if it's you working on it yourself. Now, that having been said, I'm sure if I did, you know, 2 or 3 services on the 405 and a few different jobs, I'd probably just, you know, you'd start to get, you know, interchangeable between the two. So, but as it stands for me, I think, you know, if you're going to be doing owner maintenance, it's the 322. Okay, I'm going to see if we can find the battery on the 405. I would be interested to see. Now, is there a button somewhere that we can press that opens the boot? Because I know there is on the 322, it kind of just pops up. So surely there must be a button somewhere. What do these buttons do? Well, some of them look the same. So we've got a start-stop button. So this is a 66 plate, which means it's ULEZ compliant. Right, well, I can't find the bloody button, but we'll just use the key fob. So yeah, open that up. Or is it up here? No, that's sunroof, SOS, and breakdown assistance buttons. Well, there you go. You can let me know in the comments below if you know where the button is. So let's have a look in here. What have we got there? Right, spare wheel. And I'm guessing, yeah, that's the compressor under there. So I wonder where the hell the battery is. Yeah, no idea. So yeah, the battery's got to be in there. And I've just sort of peeled that open, and I can just about see there's a red cable in there somewhere. So I'm going to say with 99% confidence that the battery is tucked in there, which looks like a bit of a faff to change because getting these spare wheels out is always a backbreaker. It's a backbreaker on the 322, and it's probably going to be even more of a backbreaker on this particular one because it's sat on, is it 22s? Yeah, 22s. So they are really quite heavy wheels, those. Is there a button in here that closes? Yeah, oh no, that's, electrically deployed tow bar. Oh, this looks like quite a handy feature. So I think that puts those seats down. Yeah, that's quite good, that. Although, I mean, yeah, is it quite good? How difficult is it to just open the door? And, you know, it's, yeah, I don't know, it's a bit gimmicky really, a bit too fancy. I think it's, you know, that's possibly just another feature that's going to go wrong. So, yeah, I think in terms of maintainability, I think if you're planning on doing the maintenance yourself, it points to 322. If you're going to outsource it to an independent specialist, then yeah, you may as well get a 405 because they'll be working on them day in, day out, and they'll know what they're doing. So yeah, there's the button for that. Right, I think what we're going to do next is set the camera up in the cars and take each one for a little drive and do some compare and contrast. Right, just before we go for a test drive, I want to quickly talk about values. So the retail price of this L405 that I'm in, which is a 66 plate SDV8 with 113,000 miles on it, is £22,000. The retail value for that 12 plate Westminster, which has 82,000 miles on the clock, is £17,500. Now, look, this is not an apples and apples comparison because they are different years, they are different mileages, and they are totally different cars. And I think that's the real emphasis I want to make in this video. They're not really a direct comparison. The L405 is more like a Mercedes S-Class. The L322 is more like a Land Cruiser in terms of the feel of it. Not necessarily saying the reliability wise, but definitely in terms of the feel. It's a lot more utilitarian than the 405. So they're totally different cars. And again, when you're doing your comparison, I think it's really important that you figure out what is important to you when you're buying the car. Do you want an ultra luxury wagon that's never going to leave the pavement? Well then, yeah, the 405 is probably the one if you're prepared to pay the money. Do you want a very comfortable, quite luxurious car which has that kind of practicality for everyday life? You know, it's easy to live with. It's really easy to live with a 405 because, you know, it's a really functional car. The 405, from what I can see in terms of the space and the layout, I think it is more of a luxury bus rather than a utilitarian one. And I think that's reflected also in the prices. So I still think the 405, yeah, the prices have corrected in a big way. So, you know, there's lots of people who are talking down the price of 405s on Facebook and all the other bloody forums. I think a lot of these people don't really know what they're talking about. There is still a lot of demand for the 405. Yes, the values have corrected. However, I think that they were far too high over the last couple of years. And people now understand that, yeah, these are coming on for 8-10-year-old cars, and the prices are now, I think, where they kind of should be. I think the 322 prices have stabilized. I don't see them going down. I think with respect to the 405, it's going to vary massively depending on your circumstances, whether or not you can get insurance for it. If you're living in central London, you're going to have trouble. But what I would say is that insurance across the board is up. So if you go onto like Tesla groups, you go onto Mercedes groups, Audi's groups, any performance car, like, you know, owners group on Facebook, you're going to find people whinging about insurance prices. So I think, you know, you've got to take all these things with a pinch of salt. I feel that the values on the 405 have come down significantly. I think now is probably quite a good time to buy one. I don't necessarily think they're going to tank any further. But who knows, you know, as I said in my previous video, this is not financial advice. And yeah, as I say, I think the 322 values are quite stable now. What I would say is people are not pinching those. These definitely have got a reputation for being pinched. So yeah, anyway, enough of me rambling. Let's go for a test drive and I will give you my thoughts on how it goes. One more thing, I apologise, I've still got my Blair Witch shaky camera mount. I have ordered a new one, but yeah, bear with me on this one. It will be a bit shaky. Right, we'll just quickly lock the other car, fire this one up. Okay, and let's get us into drive, handbrake off, and let's get us into normal mode, because that was in access mode. Okay, got normal selected. Right, I'm not going to do a super long drive because we've got the Blair Witch camera mount, which is super shaky. So we're just going to go around the block and I will give you my initial impressions. Very smoothly. So this is sat on 22-inch turbine alloys, which I'm categorically not a fan of. I think the tyre profile is far too low, and I think this car is better on, I like it on 20s. I've driven one on 20s and it was really good, and I think 21 is the right compromise. You just get a bit more tyre profile, and I think it's a bit more suitable for everyday use, especially if you want to avoid curb rash. So what are my thoughts? Yeah, it's very comfortable. Yeah, I feel like it's quieter than the 322. And in terms of turn of pace, you know what, to be honest with you, I've not really noticed much difference between this and the other one, the 322. And in terms of, I think you call it primary ride, so that is how the vehicle goes over the sort of big undulations. I would say that they're very comparable, certainly in the straight. I think the secondary ride, which is kind of how the vehicle deals with potholes and those kind of like sudden jolts, I do think the 405 has the upper hand on that secondary ride. Sometimes the 322 can just feel a little bit unsettled. Now, obviously, look, this is a pretty brief test, and I'm not taking this around the Nürburgring. However, when I was driving this earlier, it did feel a lot more car-like, so it feels more dynamic. The weight, I think, it feels like it's got the centre of mass a bit lower. It is physically wider than the 322, and I think in terms of that, again, it's sort of like that qualitative, very subjective view. It does feel wider, and that translates to how it handles on the road as well. Now, this is quite a shitty, bumpy section of road, this, and yeah, to that point around ride, I think the secondary ride properties of this 405 are better than the 322, and you would expect that. This is 4 years more development that Land Rover have put in. Well, firstly, it's a totally different vehicle, and then secondly, you've got 4 years of extra tech. This one compared to the 2012 L322. So yeah, I do think it's a very, very nice ride, this. And I think if you're buying it for comfort and for luxury, then you won't be disappointed with the 405. Now, just interesting, when I kind of floored it after I got to the de-restricted section there, going up the hill, I didn't actually feel like there was that much difference in oomph, and we'll obviously go and do the same with the 322. I do feel like the 322 has got plenty of oomph. Now, the tech spec, the 322, on the label, it says it'll go to 60 in 7.5 seconds, and the tech spec on this 405 says it will go to 60 in 6.5 seconds. In the real world, I don't think you can really tell the difference. However, again, when it comes to spec, this car is a lot lighter. I think it's about 400 kilos lighter than the 322, and that's because it uses a lot of aluminium throughout the construction. The L322 has some aluminium in it, some parts made of aluminium, but the majority of it is a steel construction, so they have shaved a lot of weight off this, and that translates through into fuel economy. I drove one of these down from North Yorkshire it was probably about a year ago now, and I was phenomenally impressed with the economy. I basically put the cruise control at 70 and it did 40 miles to the gallon, which is very impressive for such a big bus. So yeah, I think overall summary of this is very comfortable. It feels very luxurious. It feels a lot more like a Mercedes S-Class than it does a Toyota Land Cruiser, which I think is the kind of like, the kind of comparison I would kind of pitch the two vehicles against one another. Yeah, in terms of what's right for you, well, that's a really good question. It depends what your lifestyle's like. If you've got kids, maybe the 405 might be less practical because it's got a smaller boot opening. It's a bit more, it's a bit finer, I think, whereas I think the 322s are a little bit more suitable kind of for everyday living with, if that makes sense. Right, I'm just going to let these folks go past before pulling in, and then we'll swap over to the 322. Yeah, interestingly, even though this is a much newer vehicle, the reversing camera is still crap. You know, it really is amazing how much technology has improved when you're looking at, like, you know, 24 cars. The reversing cameras on them are a lot better. But yeah, overall, very impressed. Lovely car. Would I have one? Yes. Do I prefer it to the 322? Not sure. Let's drive the other one and find out. Okay, straight away, in terms of impressions, this L322 feels more armchairish. It definitely feels more like I have just got into a wing-back chair instead of, I don't know, out of a racing car. This is a lot more wingback chairish. I think I've heard people say that the 405 feels more wrapped in. That's definitely true. The 322 feels a lot more kind of spaced out, even though it is actually a narrower car, ever so slightly. Right, let's go for a little drive. Okay, so I have got 20-inch wheels on this one, and a nice chunky tyre, so I'll put grabber 83s on this car, which I think suit the 322 really well. They're a great tyre. Okay, yeah, I stand by what I said. The L322 is a little bit noisier. You can hear some of that kind of road noise coming through in terms of like the jolts, and I think that's partly because the cabin is a bit bigger. I think the acoustics in the 405 are possibly a bit better. In terms of seat comfort, yeah, okay, that 405's got a bit of extra adjustability, but I stand by what I said previously. The seat on the 322 is fabulous. It's got to be one of the most comfortable in the class, you know, from 2012, so really no complaints there. I feel like the steering is a bit lighter on this car compared to the 405. And I don't know if that's just because I've got these grabber 83s on, whereas that 405 had, I think they were Scorpions on a 22 tyre. So I'm going to do the same kind of punch it from 30 when I hit the de-restricted up to 60. And so here we go. I mean, that feels good. Feels like there's more drama in the 322, actually. I really like that. Feels like there's definitely more, like, you know, there's a bit more noise. You can really hear that V8 work. You still get that kind of, you know, pinned back into your seat. I think the noise on that engine is a lot more characterful than on the 405, even though it is the same. It's by all intent and purpose, it's the same block. It's the same engine, just with a bit less power. In terms of ride quality, yeah, I stand by what I said. Primary ride on the two cars is pretty similar. However, I think the 405 just has the edge in terms of dealing with you know, road imperfections, potholes, handling wise. Yeah, there's a bit more body roll in the 322, but again, I think that kind of, it balances out by being a little bit more compliant in the primary ride, so it is a bit softer. But yeah, so this is a bit of a choppy road, and I do feel like the 405 handled this section of choppy road. You know, it's quite bumpy, with more refinement on that 405. So yeah, that is quite an interesting comparison. Just in terms of visibility though, so I feel like I have much better visibility in this 322 compared to the 405. It's a lot more open, a lot more spacious, a lot more airy, lighter. The A-pillars are narrower, so it does feel like a much more kind of airy vehicle. But again, you know, I've said this before, they're two completely different cars, and it's not really fair comparing the two. I think if you want a fair comparison, you've got to compare the, you know, 4.4 TDV8 L322 against the 3.6 L322 TDV8, or the petrol L322s, because they are then the same car. It's, you know, it's a more fair comparison. So yeah, I also think that the kind of steering wheel position, the steering wheel does feel a little bit bigger. It feels more like it does feel more like I'm the captain of a tanker driving this, whereas I think the analogy would be that you are the helmsman of a yacht, you know, a little racing yacht on the 405, versus the, you know, the captain of a cruise ship. That's the kind of the feel that I get in terms of difference between the two. I also, you know, I'm probably not going to go into the infotainment system. I think that's probably a subject for a whole another video. I would expect the 405 to be better than the 322 just because it's newer, but I'm not going to go into that now because I've not really had a chance to fiddle with the 405 infotainment system. So yeah, I think ride quality, this is definitely a very comfortable car. I think you can't go wrong with either when it comes to ride quality. I think for me, this kind of exercise, what it's gone to show is that the 322 is definitely a more practical vehicle, and the reason for that is bigger boot opening space. You know, you can just fold the seats down. It's dead easy to do. You know, that's a bit more fussy with the fancy, you know, things that you press for the bits and pieces to drop down. And yeah, I think for me, the 322 remains a really good car. In fact, actually on that subject, I've heard this saying before: the L322 is a better Range Rover, the L405 is a better car, and I think that is absolutely true. When I've done the two comparison, you know, side by side, I think that pretty much sums the two vehicles up. I think there's a couple more things that I want to talk about when I'm back on the driveway, and that's going to be perspective from the passenger seats and also the rear. So we'll have a quick look in the back of both. I think that will sort of fairly neatly round off the video. I would also say I believe that the L322 is a real design icon. I think for a long time when people say Range Rover, the image or images that they get in their mind is it's either this or the classic boxy Range Rover. And I think, you know, more so in the modern era, when people say Range Rover, this is what they think about. So from that perspective, in terms of like icons, this is the design icon. I think this is kind of the last real Range Rover before they started to get a bit fussy. So yeah, okay, good. Kill the engine there, and we're going to just hop in the back of both cars and we'll do a comparison there. Right, just going to hop in the back. Okay, so in terms of getting into the back of the L322, the arch is quite far back and the door is narrower, so it's maybe not that easy to get into. However, once you're in here, it is a very nice place to be. What I immediately notice is that sat here in the rear passenger, diagonally opposite the driver, I get a really good view out the front of the car. I can see all the stuff, what's going on, and it's overall actually a really very nice place to be. In terms of the sort of ergonomics, you know, I've got a nice armrest, which is maybe a bit low for me, but in terms of that sort of visibility, it's fabulous. And that seat is adjusted for, so I think I was a passenger in it last, so it's adjusted for me, and I'm 6 foot, I'm in the back now with ample comfort. So I think, yeah, the quality is excellent on the 322, and I really like the visibility. And I would be a rear passenger in a 322 any day with pleasure. It's a really nice place to be. So I think that's the summary on the 322 rear passenger. And again, just from the other side, you get a really good view out the front windshield. It's fabulous. And I think if you're the type of person who maybe suffers from car sickness, being in the back of one of these it's just not an issue, because you get such good visibility out the front. So yeah, really nice place to be. But yeah, it is a bit of a faff getting out. You know, that lip there, the opening isn't huge. I think it's good, and it's absolutely fine for a child seat and a good height for a child seat. However, if you're getting in yourself, and if that's become a bit muddy because you're driving around the countryside, that could be a bit of a pain. So yeah, that's the 322. So jumping into the 405, yeah, right, immediately you can see that door opens much wider. So that is, I'd say, yeah, quite a lot easier to get into than the 322. Now, with this car, the slope of the seat is further reclined. So I'm actually in quite a reclined position now. I almost feel like I'm kind of lying, lying back. It's quite good. And I'm not sure what the front seat's adjusted like. I feel like it's probably going to be about the same sort of adjustment for me. I think there's a little bit more leg room in the 405 than there is in the 322, and you've got more of a reclined seating position. And I think this Vogue SE actually is adjustable. Yeah, so I can move that slightly up or slightly back, which is, it's nice, but it's a bit of a gimmick really, because you don't really get that much adjustment. In terms of visibility, yeah, good, still very good. Not as good as the 322, I don't think. I think the whole car is a bit more rakish, so you haven't quite got the same level of visibility. However, I think, again, kind of staying on that theme, if you are sat in the back, I don't think this is necessarily the type of vehicle you're going to get car sick in. And then, again, we've got quite a nice armrest. That's a better height for me. It's a slightly higher up armrest, a bit more support. Yeah, this is a really nice place to be. And this particular one has a panoramic roof, which is, it's lovely for visibility if you're sat in the back. Yeah, I think this is a very nice place to spend time. The black interior, it's a bit too black for me, but it's undeniable that the quality is there. Let me just also here, I wonder what this button does. Oh, that's quite cool. So that's kind of more of a chauffeur's feature. So I've just moved that forward while sat in this passenger seat, rear passenger seat. Yeah, look, I've got loads of leg room there now. So yeah, that's quite a cool feature. But the reality is, are you really going to be chauffeured around in the back of a 22k Range Rover? I mean, I think it's unlikely, to be honest, isn't it? Yes, for the new ones, I think if you're buying them at 170k, well then yeah, you can probably afford a chauffeur. But at this level in the market, is that really a feature that's needed? It's probably a nice to have. Maybe if you've got a wife who quite likes to be spoilt, then yeah, it could be a good feature. But yeah, a bit of a gimmick for me, really. Right, I've just jumped into Bluey the Westminster to do my concluding remarks. So just a couple of points of sort of admin in terms of pros and cons. The 405, some models had a recall for the front knuckles, which I think were made of aluminium or aluminum and are prone to cracking on some years. So if you are in the market for a 405, make sure you get the VIN number, which can be found in that corner of the windshield over there. Go on to osh.landrover, plug it in and check that the vehicle that you're potentially buying has either had the recall done or it does not apply. So quite important that, because that is a real safety concern. And I've heard stories of people driving along, the knuckle failing and the whole wheel coming off, popping out the drive shaft. And, you're potentially in a life-threatening situation there if you get caught short by that. So you need to check that. In terms of kind of the other watch outs for oil dilution. Now, these 405s, I've heard lots of stories, and I have seen firsthand a car that suffered oil dilution because they've been used for short trips too much. The DPF regeneration cycle has been interrupted, and that basically dilutes the oil with diesel fuel, and you're not giving the engine the right lubricity, and then eventually it fails. So really important that if you are doing lots of short trips in your L405, you must change the oil more regular than the Land Rover maintenance schedule. So as a general rule of thumb, if you're a short trip user, you should be changing your oil every 5,000 miles. If you're a long trip user, I think 10,000 miles is a good time to be changing oil. Yes, Land Rover say that the interval is 15,000 miles for both the 322 and the 405. However, ultimately, Land Rover only really care about the car for the first 3 years for the first PCP customer. Beyond that, you know, they're kind of quite a lot less interested. And, you know, ultimately they are designing cars to a life of 150,000 miles, give or take. So you can extend that life considerably by regular oil changes. So yeah, that's an admin point. And what I would just say is, one thing that the 405 does have as a pro over the 322 is it doesn't seem to be as susceptible to corrosion. So that does seem to be sorted on the 405, whereas the 322 does suffer from corrosion around the rear arches and the tailgate. So it's, you know, it's good that it's sorted on the 405, and you'd expect that because it's mostly aluminium. Okay, concluding remarks. What car would I pick? I would pick a 322, and the reason for that is that it suits my lifestyle. I, you know, do things like go to timber yards and pick up wood for various different projects. I go and pick up car parts, and, you know, I move bicycles around, and I, you know, fill the car full of stuff. I like having a big wagon with an easy boot space to access. I think it's much better in the field to have a 322 with the manual opening, you know, tailgate and lower tailgate. So for me, that is one of the best features about the 322. I absolutely love that tailgate on the 322. I also like how, I, you know, kind of described, it's quite dramatic when you put your foot down in the 322. You can really hear the V8 go. It feels more like a boat in terms of that sort of surge of the front kind of lifting up slightly. I like that. I think that's fun and characterful. What else? I think that I like how airy the 322 is, and I like that you can see all the corners, which it's less of that on the 405. I think what the 405 has over the 322 is the ride quality, that secondary ride quality. So going over potholes, yes, undeniably better in the 405, and you'd expect that because it's a much newer car, you know, much improved vehicle dynamics. But for me at the moment anyway, it's still a 322, and, you know, one of the reasons that I would say that also is because you know, the 322 has started to become a modern classic. Particularly with Westminsters, they are very sought after. They're the end of the line, end of the real Range Rovers, and I think that if you find a nice Westminster that's sorted, you know, has a good history, you do run the risk of actually not losing very much money on it at all. So I do think that would be where I would go if I was in the market for a Range Rover today, which I think is the 3rd of March 2024. But who knows, you know, we'll maybe recap this subject in 12 months time, see what the 405 market's doing, and you know, I might have a changed position there in terms of my own view. But yeah, I hope you found that helpful. It's been actually quite good fun to film. So yeah, I think next up I'm going to try and find a petrol L322 and do a bit of a diesel versus petrol comparison, because yeah, again, I think that will be quite good fun. So yeah, thanks guys, appreciate you watching. What I would just ask is, if you've got any comments, you know, let me know in the section below what you want to see next. I would also be interested to know what maintenance issues you guys have had on your 405s, if you've had any. You know, what should people be looking out for? Stick that in the comments below. I think that would be really interesting and a good discussion. So yeah, cheers, bye.